We'll get started. I know it's a busy day for everybody with school starting tomorrow and just all the orientation things. And I'm sure you've been in many meetings and events. Hope it's all going well so far. And it's been a fun and busy week. And hopefully you're looking forward to school starting tomorrow. Welcome to the CPT information session. My name is Megan Spalding, and I'm the director of the Albers Placement Center. We are the Career Center for the business school, so we help Albers grad and undergrad students with all things career planning. And today is all about CPT, which is we're going to get into what it is, but basically a temporary work authorization for international students, so that you have the opportunity to pursue paid internships off campus. So really excited to see you all here. I have a lot of colleagues in on the call as well. Maybe if people kind of want to just say a quick hello. Our full Albers Placement Center team is here. So Justin Dolce is our grad business career programs manager. He's actually going to help co-present in a little bit and talk about looking for internships. We have Lori Nilo, who's our employer relations manager, and then Rebecca Carlson, who's our manager of experiential programs. So full APC team is here to help support this. And then I also saw some colleagues from International Student Center. Thank you all for being here. So I think I saw Dale Watanabe is here. He's the director of International Student Center. And Chloe Thomas is also here. She's an International Student Center advisor. Am I missing anybody, Dale? Anybody else from your team?
I think Tashi is also here.
Oh, Tashi's here. Yay! Tashi, welcome. Tashi's also an International Student Center advisor. So lots of great knowledge and wisdom and support in the Zoom call with us today. Thank you guys for being here. So I'm going to dive into the PowerPoint here in just a second, but first I wanted to show you, and I'm going to put these websites in the chat so that you can access them. The first one is our website, the Albers Placement Center website, and it's our place where you would go to. We have a whole page just about job and internship search resources. And in the middle of that menu there, it's all about internship for credit. And as we get into this presentation, you'll see that internship for credit is part of the CPT process. And so there's more information here about it. Also link to our internship for credit information packet, which is a really important part of the CPT process. So I just wanted to make sure you all, after this presentation, could go and look at that closer. Talks about how many credits you can earn, hour requirements, who the faculty sponsor would be, depending on the department, things like that. So that'll be a helpful resource for you to look at after we're done. And then I also wanted to link you to the CPT portion of the International Student Center website. This is also going to be really helpful for you just to understand all of the requirements. And if everybody could mute themselves, that'd be great. You can make sure you're muted. So this will tell you, what needs to be in the job offer letter from the company, what is required from the, immigration standpoint for a CPT, and what's the difference, and what is it all about. So that's a really good resource for you to look at as well. I just put those in the chat, so hopefully you can access those after we're done today. So let me get into my slideshow here. Everybody see this okay? Team, look okay? All right, if anybody can't see this slideshow, let me know. Okay, so we're just going to kind of bear with me because there's a lot of details here. We're going to try to start from kind of big picture and then build into more of the details and specifics for Albers in regards to CPT. If you have questions as we go along, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them as we can. There's always a lot of questions in the chat, so bear with us. We might have to cover them towards the end because it's a little hard to keep up with them as we go through. So team, both ISC and APC, if you guys could keep managing the chat for me, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so kind of what we're going to go over today. What is CPT? How do you determine eligibility for it? Hours and credits. What does the process look like? There's a few special circumstances that come up. And then Justin is going to dive into just internship search tips and resources for when you're ready to go look for and apply for internships. He's got some really good tips and ideas for that. And then we'll kind of go through some questions. Thank you, Dale, for monitoring the chat. So what is CPT? I find that a lot of students are very familiar with OPT and have heard the term OPT, but not often as familiar with CPT. So as an F1 student, you have 2 temporary work authorization options available to you, CPT and OPT. And CPT is an acronym. It stands for Curricular Practical Training. It's a form of temporary work authorization for F1 visa students. The practical training part is, work experience that should be related to your major or degree of study. More often than not, and most commonly, that practical training is an internship, and I'll dive into that in a minute. Sometimes it's a co-op, which is kind of a longer term, maybe 6 month. That happens more kind of in engineering. But practical training, meaning you're beyond the classroom, getting actual hands-on experience. Curricular practical training is considered part of your program of study. So what happens is we have to kind of show that that internship is now a part of your program, and that doing that internship is supplementing your program. It's adding to the skills you're learning in school. Immigration would say that CPT needs to be integral to your degree. Okay, so that's an important part of your degree that you're pursuing in the studying that you're doing here. This temporary work authorization is for paid internships. It's not for full-time, long-term jobs. It can be a full-time internship, and we'll talk about what does full-time mean versus part-time, but it's not for a long-term, like the company expects you to be with them, 2 or 3 years working in a full-time capacity. That is not what CPT exists for. It exists for you to get hands-on training in a temporary situation that adds to or enhances your degree of study. And so in that way, CPT is different than OPT, and we'll kind of go through those differences here in a minute. So then when we start to break it down, it's like, well, then what do you mean by internship? So if I can do an internship on CPT, well, what is an internship? And that one's a little bit harder to define. It's a little bit of a broad term. It defined differently amongst companies, but in general, here is some common aspects we'd be looking for. So internships themselves can be paid or unpaid. They can be full-time or part-time, and they're generally we're looking for them to be professional related experience. So that might involve, having ownership over some kind of project. So if a company's hired you for the summer, that there's like something in particular they're having you work on, maybe solving a problem or developing something new. And then, by the end of the summer, hopefully that project is done, but you have ownership over it. A little bit more responsibility, that you're working amongst full-time, employees, partnering with them, supporting them, hands-on experience related to what you're studying in your degree. So it utilizes degree level skills. So, if you're a grad student and you're looking at internships, we're going to be looking for that it's, grad student level. that, ideally they're wanting somebody who's in a grad program, a little bit higher level than an undergrad, level internship. And that, it's directly related to what you're studying in your degree. So I've had students approach me, hey, could I be a sales associate at Nordstrom and do CPT? Could I just get something more considered as a part-time job? And no, that is not what this work authorization is for. It's really meant to be more that professional level, something related to what you're studying. Now, internships by themselves, just alone, can be for credit or not for credit. So, a domestic student wants to do an internship, maybe it would help them to do it for credit. If it doesn't, that's fine. They can still do an internship. But there's a caveat to that for CPT, and I'll explain that in a minute. So again, internship is a very loose term, but these are some of the things as you're considering positions, and we can help give advice on if we think an internship would be CPT level or not, but these would be the things you're looking for. I don't think I have to convince many of you that you should try to do CPT and do an internship. You're all here obviously because you're already interested in that. You probably see the value in it, but if you're kind of like thinking about this or unsure about it, why might you try to do this and utilize this opportunity in your program? Internships really help you enhance your skills, your technical skills, your relevant skills related to your degree, also helps you build transferable skills. So, ones that would help you just with professional development. It's a way for you to kind of take what you're learning in the class and go get some direct experience in it, try it out, see what it's like, on a day-to-day basis in the working world. Because sometimes I know things in class can be a little more theoretical. Also, while you're working, the hope is that you're building your professional connections, building your network, maybe getting some referrals, or just kind of, building out your community here living in the US, and building out more of your professional community to help you long term. And then obviously, who doesn't want to make money, right? So helpful to earn money while you're maintaining your F1 status, if that's helpful for you for living expenses and things like that. I'm just seeing a quick chat. Do internships add to your work experience on your resume? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Employers love to see relevant internships, relevant work experience. So yes, this is definitely something that you would add on to your resume. Okay, so this conversation around internship for credit. So in Albers, we have an internship for credit process that stands alone. That's available for any student. So again, a domestic student, if they looked at their degree program and saw, oh, I have some elective credits I need to fulfill, I'm doing an internship this summer, maybe I could take some credit to fulfill that elective credit. We have that process in place. So internship for credit is happening all the time for a variety of students. When you do CPT, it has to involve internship for credit. So CPT always goes along with internship for credit, okay? The reason being, it's that curricular part in the CPT. In order for us to justify that this experience is part of your curriculum, we have to make it part of your curriculum. And we do that by registering you in credit for the internship. So now it kind of, shows up within your degree. And so that's a requirement that we've established with International Student Center, so that if we ever got audited by immigration, we can show that these experiences are part of the student's degree program. They're integral to the degree because they're doing credit for the experience, if that makes sense. So anytime you want to do a CPT, we're looking at enrolling you in credit for that experience. Hopefully that makes sense. So how is CPT different than OPT? They are used kind of at different times and they're used for different reasons. And then they both have very different processes. OPT stands for optional practical training. Most of the time it's used after graduation, and it's a 12-month work visa that you can apply for so that you can stay in the country after your degree is over and be getting some work experience. There is a possibility to use OPT before you graduate, but because we have such a pretty useful and open CPT, I've found that most students aren't having to use OPT prior to graduation. They're just doing CPT in order to do a paid internship. So most students would be doing OPT after their degree. And you can get an OPT, you can apply for OPT after each level of degree. So if you do an associate's degree, complete that, you can apply for OPT and have it for 12 months. Then when you complete your bachelor's, apply for OPT, have it for 12 months. Same with master's and PhD. But if you do it for master's one time, if you go to get another master's degree, you cannot do another OPT. It's just for that one time degree level. So very different processes. OPT would be, some students do multiple different jobs or internships during their OPT year. Some students might be on one job that whole time, but it does allow you, to kind of work and get paid that whole year. Some of our programs in Albers are what's called STEM approved degrees. With those, when you graduate from them, if you get a STEM related job on OPT, then you have the possibility of applying for STEM extension OPT, which will allow you to have another 2 years in addition to the first 3 years total on OPT. But you apply for that later with your company and all of that. So, and then very different processes. When you do OPT, you're actually going to do that whole process through International Student Center. And then CPT process involves us, the academic department, and International Student Center. Generally, CPT and OPT don't really intermingle unless sometimes it can be tricky when you're doing CPT in your final quarter. It can impact or delay your OPT application depending on when you get that CPT process finalized. If you're not eligible to do CPT, which really isn't happening, we've expanded our CPT policies, so that's not really an issue anymore. But if you can't do CPT, then you would be looking at pre-OPT as an option. If you do a full-time position on CPT for more than a calendar year, it negates your OPT. So you really want to be watching. If you get a long-term internship that's full-time, which is great, you got to be watching that. You don't want to work over, I'd say you'll be safe and stop at 11 months so that you still have your OPT visa available to you. Okay. Okay, so trying to determine eligibility with CPT can be a little tricky. We'll talk general guidelines here, but I know everybody's has a different unique situation. So it's always good to double check with International Student Center on if you're eligible to do CPT or when you're eligible, because everybody's cases can be a little unique. So there's two sides to the eligibility part. There's US immigration requirements, and then there's Albers requirements. So we'll look at the US immigration requirements first. Theirs are a little pretty basic, not too many requirements, which is, I know, kind of miraculous. Feels like they always have a lot of requirements. So to be eligible to do CPT from the US immigration standpoint, you have to be on F1 status for at least 3 consecutive quarters full-time and being on the same SEVIS number that whole time. So for instance, if you did undergrad degree here in the States and you just finished that last June, you did something, took a break over the summer And now you're back here to do our MSF program, same CVIS number, nothing changed with that number, or you just like basically rolled right into your next master's degree. You're ready to do CPT right away, according to immigration. If this is your very first time studying in the US, you're just starting this fall quarter, you're brand new to here, then the first time you could do CPT would be next summer quarter, as long as you're full-time fall, winter, and spring. So just some examples of what that looks like. The internship must relate to your major or degree. That's an immigration requirement and also an Albers requirement. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but you know, immigration is, again, it's curricular practical training. It's integral to your degree. So this internship should be directly related to what you're studying in order to get it approved. And then you have to have CPT if the internship is paid. I think most people would recommend even doing CPT, even if the internship is unpaid, because technically on an F1 visa, you don't have any work authorization with just the F1 visa alone, other than working on campus. So if you just have an F1 visa, you can work on campus and get paid. But any kind of work off campus, paid or unpaid, you technically don't have authorization for that unless you do a CPT. So I think sometimes it's wise to get a CPT, even if the position is unpaid, just so you make sure you're, you know, basically like, you know, meeting all the requirements of immigration. You don't want to, you know, kind of have them look at that and, you know, had it been a position that wasn't approved or on CPT, it could affect your application for maybe a green card or another visa down the road. So probably safer at this point to do a CPT for both. I'll usually coach students if it's an unpaid opportunity. We'll look at it. Is it worth it? Is it worth using your CPT for that? Do you maybe want to hold out and see if you can get, you know, a paid opportunity? There are some strong unpaid internships with nonprofits, sometimes government. Government and nonprofits are allowed to offer unpaid internships. If it's a for-profit company, they really should be paying you. We're going to be looking at that because we want to make sure that it's legitimate and you're not getting it taken advantage of. So, and then our Albers requirements are that you must enroll in internship credit to do the CPT, even if you don't need the credit. So internship credit in Albers counts as elective credit. So if you've come to us and you want to do CPT and we look at your degree and you've used up all your electives, it's a bummer, but we're still going to require you to take credit because we have to show immigration again that this is part of your curriculum. And so we do that by turning the internship into a class. So it's really good to plan ahead for CPT so that you can fit this into your electives. Tell your advisor you plan to do a CPT or a paid internship at some point. So you can, as you're planning your classes, you don't take all of your electives and then not have any credit available for CPT. So I would, you know, when you're talking to your advisor, make sure they're aware so they can bake this in and plan it with you. And then you're not taking credit and more importantly, not paying for credit that you don't need. I know some of you may be transfer students at the undergrad level. If you're coming in with an AA degree, sometimes your AA degree eats up all of your general elective credit. So then in order to do a CPT, you will have to add on credit. But if you can do your internship during the school year, it usually works pretty well. We can like roll that credit into your normal tuition amount, and then you're not having to pay extra money for it. Trickier for grad students on that because you all pay by credit. And so you really want to try and plan to, you know, include this credit in your electives that you need. Okay. And then if you're doing CPT, we require that you maintain full-time student status unless it's a vacation quarter for you, which I think most students' vacation quarter is the summertime. So if you're interning, let's say, you know, in winter quarter, you need to maintain full-time status. For grad students, that's 6 credits. For undergrads, that's 12. So need to make sure, hopefully you can kind of manage all of that. And then CPT, you think of CPT like a class. So the internship dates have to align with the quarter where you're taking the credit. So let me give an example. If you came to us and said, I want to intern and do a CPT winter quarter, or a company has offered me a position and it's mostly going to be in the winter, and that's when I want to do my credit, you would be eligible to start that internship as soon as fall quarter is over. But you could not start it if fall quarter was still going on, because it's going to be, your credit is going to be in the winter. So we're always kind of looking at dates. It might mean you have to go back and negotiate with the employer on around the start date, because that start date cannot be overlapping with another quarter where you're not doing credit, if that makes sense. So we'll help you on that. We can clarify that. As long as that prior quarter is over, then you can start. And then we'll talk about what happens if your internship is longer than the quarter. There's definitely options for that. The only other major requirement from Albers' perspective is if you're doing a full-time internship, which is over 20 hours a week, we require that you not take more than 2 classes at the same time. We don't, you're here primarily to be a student. We want to make sure that we stay true to that, and that you're meeting your academic expectations and staying up on your classes. Also want to make sure your work at the internship and the company is not suffering by you having, committed to too many things. And so I guess at the grad level, it'd be no more than 2 classes. Undergrads, we would probably want to make sure you're just in that 12 credits minimum and not doing more than that. So during a normal quarter where you're taking a full class load, it's probably wise to just try to do a part-time internship. But if that's not an option, we can kind of work with you on that and just make sure that you're not taking too many classes along with the full-time internship. So immigration considers a full-time internship to be anything between 21 and 40 hours. And then part-time is anything up to 20 hours. Dale, you are awesome on that chat. Thank you so much. Hours and credits really depend on the program that you're in. So that's why I put in the chat at the way beginning, if you want to scroll up to the top of the chat, I put in the link to our internship for credit website with our packet on it, because it explains in there different hours and credits. Depends on if you're an undergrad or a grad student, how many credits you're able to do and count towards your program depends on the program you're in. So this is where it gets tricky and kind of really particular to the student. So we're happy to kind of coach on that. For most grad programs, you can do up to 3 credits and count it towards your electives. After that, after the 3 credits, then it would just be extra credit. Accounting is a little bit different. So if you're in MPAC or MSAA, we can talk about the difference there. At the undergrad level, generally you can use up to 5 credits towards your program. Again, accounting is a little bit different policy, but we're always going to be looking at too, like, what do you need in terms of credits? Let's not, have you do more than what you need. So we're always kind of paying attention to that. There's really no maximum hours on internships. It's more minimum. So for instance, if you're doing 3 credits for an internship, the minimum amount of hours is 150 hours for the quarter. That basically breaks down to about 15 hours a week of work for a 10-week quarter. That's kind of how that's figured out. 1 or 2 credits is usually around 100 hours. So that's breaking, to about 10 to 15 hours of work a week would be the minimum, is what we would be hoping for. So that's kind of applied to most programs, but there's some specifics. So you'll want to check out that packet. Thanks, Lori, Lori just posted that link again in case you all need it. So Oh, okay. Now let's go into process. And kind of what this looks like. Let me kind of give you a general sense of the process, and I'll kind of give you a sense of how long it takes so you can be planning ahead for this as well. Okay, so the first step would be to determine eligibility. I would highly, highly, highly recommend you have a conversation with your International Student Center advisor and probably a conversation with us here in Albers before you even start applying for internships, just to make sure you're eligible, you're ready to do CPT, that we've coached you on what types of things you want to be looking for that would apply for your program, you know, that you're looking in the right places for the right types of opportunities that would fit this. I can't tell you how many times students have made assumptions or talked to their friend and just went ahead and applied and accepted an internship. And then they come to us and it's like, oh no, this is not going to work, or this is not, you know, going to be accepted for your program, or this is not to the level we'd be hoping for. The faculty, so ultimately the faculty, when you do internship for credit, you get a faculty sponsor. And the faculty are going to be evaluating that internship. Ultimately, they approve it for credit. So for instance, we have an awesome faculty sponsor in finance. So Kathy Cow is the department chair. She's really looking for that internship to be finance focused to count towards MSF. We've had some students who got more of an accounting related internship, and she did not approve it for credit towards the MSF. Okay, so you really want to make sure you're talking to us. We can also connect you to the faculty sponsor so you understand what the expectations would be and what they're looking for to be able to count it towards your program. Professor Nathan Colliner is the director of MSBA. He's really looking, MSBA students, for your internship to be business analytics focused. If it's in finance or marketing, it's probably not going to be accepted for credit. So you really want to make sure that you're getting that information and thinking about that when you're looking for positions. Then you'll go ahead and look for and apply for internships, and Justin's going to talk about that in a little bit. Once you get an offer and it looks good and you've accepted it, the employer writes you an offer letter. I'll show you what needs to be in that here in the next slide. There's a process. This is explained in the internship for credit packet. You'll go into Handshake and request internship credit. That gets forwarded to the faculty sponsor. And if it all looks good, it looks like a strong internship, they'll approve it. And then the APC, our office, will write an academic CPT letter for you. The offer letter from the employer needs to have these elements in it. And it's really important to give this information to the employer because a lot of times a standard offer letter from a company does not have these pieces in it. And International Student Center needs this information because they put this information into the CVIS database into your record. So we need the job title. Hopefully it has intern in it. Dates of employment. So the start and end date. How many hours a week you'll be working. The location of where the actual work will take place. And so if it's a remote position, that's okay. We'll put the location of the company and then we'll put in there that it's remote. But if you're working in person, we need to know, like, where's the city and state where you're actually working. And then a brief description of responsibilities. You can attach the job description if that works the best. Okay. So basically, once you've submitted that internship for credit request, the faculty approves it. That can take anywhere from 1 to 3 days. It just depends on what's going on for the faculty. Sometimes when we're on breaks or in the summer quarter, it can take longer. For instance, Professor Colliner was on a study abroad program a couple weeks ago. So it was taking a little bit longer to get internships for credit approved by him because he was gone. So you always kind of have to have, this is like on average, you have to kind of have patience around that. Once that credit is approved by the faculty, then an Albers Placement Center staff member will enroll you in the credit. That can take us a couple of days, depending on what's going on here for us. Then the APC will send over a CPT letter to your ISC advisor. You'll also send your employer offer letter to that ISC advisor, and they will make you a new I-20 with the CPT information on it. That can take 3 to 5 days because ISC is very busy. They're supporting a lot of students. And then, so you just want to be patient around that as well. We also had a major uptick in CPTs the last year or two. So they're just kind of flooded lately. And so as much patience as you can provide is greatly appreciated. If you need a social security number, in addition to all this, to be able to go work, you can't apply for social security number until your CPT process is done. Once that's done, you can go to the Social Security Administration office down in Seattle and apply for this. This takes the longest because it's, through our government. So it can take 3 to 4 weeks to get your social security number. So it's really good to kind of like, I basically put this up here because our whole CPT process on campus can take at least a week, sometimes a little bit more. Then if you also need to apply for social security number, that's another 3 to 4 weeks. So it can be quite the process. And so you need to make sure that you're communicating with the employer how much time some of this will take and when you'll be eligible and ready to start work. So it's really important to be upfront about all of that with the employer so that their expectations are aligned. Also just want to point out like all the different people that are involved in this process and why sometimes it can take a little bit longer because not everybody's able to like drop everything and do your CPT right away. So there's, obviously our office, maybe your academic advisor is involved if you're checking on where you are with elective credits and trying to plan fitting the CPT into your degree. The registrar is not as involved anymore because luckily they've now given us the ability to register you for the credit. But if you're registering late in the quarter, after the add drop time frame, then we will have to involve the registrar because we'll do a late add for the credit. So that can take a little bit of time. International Student Center is amazing. And of course, they're involved in this because they're the ones who actually issue you the CPT with the new I-20. Your faculty sponsors involved, approving your credit, and the employer is involved in this because they have to write you the offer letter. And sometimes that can take a couple days, especially if it's going through HR or, they're just caught up in other things. So just being really mindful of all the different parties and what's going on. And so, I think kind of the big message here, and I'll show you a slide here on that, just planning ahead, communicating, staying on top of all this, being patient, and then especially communicating with the employer, that this is a process and it might take a little bit longer than expected. Couple special circumstances, and I think I've seen some of these in the chat, so hopefully these get addressed here. So if your internship falls outside the dates of the quarter, it's generally okay to use the weeks between the quarters for your CPT as well. So if you're doing a spring internship, you can start the week of spring break because winter quarter is officially over. Or if you're starting a summer internship, you can start as soon as spring quarter is over. Summertime is the nicest time to intern because you have all the way from mid-June up until school starting, like you'd have up till today, basically, to do that whole summer internship. So it's a really long period of time. It's just one CPT that whole time. I think it's like 14 weeks or something like that. So really good time frame to do an internship. If you want to do multiple internships or one long internship, that's absolutely possible. So this credit can be spread out. So if you're an MBA student and you can do up to 3 credits towards your electives for internship, you don't have to do all 3 of those credits at one time. So you could maybe do an internship next summer and do 1 credit. Maybe that internship then extends into fall, you do another credit, or maybe you want to do a different internship in the fall, you save a credit so you can do a different internship. So there's a lot of different ways to maneuver this and mix it up so that you can get as much hands-on work experience as possible. We had a couple students this summer run into issues where they had an internship this summer and they said, yeah, I want to do the 3 credits. And I said, are you sure the internship's not going to, spread out into fall or continue into fall? Nope, I'm pretty sure it's just for the summer. I'm going to do all 3 credits. Okay, great. And then I've been hearing from multiple of them in the last couple of weeks, and now their internship's being extended into fall. So now, unfortunately, they can do that. They can keep doing their CPT, but now they're adding on credit that they don't need. So I know that's hard to know for sure, but good to be mindful and strategizing that, so that if there's any inkling you think that internship might continue into another quarter, it might be better to spread that credit out and not use it all at one time. It is good to know, though, that we have to go through the CPT process each time. So that process I just showed you on that slide, if you're going to intern fall, winter, spring, we have to do that process for fall. And then we have to do it again when you can register for winter classes. And then we do it again when you can register for spring classes. So just knowing that, and the employer is going to have to, provide an offer letter, and you have to register and request the credit each time. So I know it gets kind of annoying, but we do have to go through that every time. Okay, so plan all this with your academic advisor. Make sure you're staying up on your full-time student status. There are other options instead of CPT, but because CPT is so quick and easy and available to most all of you, I would say just focus on doing a CPT. Pre-OPT takes like 2 to 3 months to get approved. You're using up, some of your 12 months before you graduate. You might want to save that. So I would say, probably behoove you to do CPT for these paid opportunities. Okay. Dale, thank you for managing all these questions. You're so great. I'm going to turn it over to Justin, my colleague, and Justin's going to talk a little bit about the search for internships and how some tips around that and how our office can support you in that.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everybody. As Megan mentioned earlier, my name's Justin Dolce, and I'm the manager of grad business career programs. So for any grad students on the webinar today, if you make an appointment or career advising appointment, I would be your primary career advisor. So I'm going to talk about some resources we have for international students that can aid in your job search, and also some tips that are generally helpful for any job search, but I think are extremely important for international students conducting a job search. Because employers can bring on an intern with CPT doesn't always mean they're going to want to. The reason being is because a lot of employers use their internship pool as a pipeline for full-time hiring. And in order to bring somebody on full-time, yes, you can use your OPT, but that, depending on what program you're in, could be 2 or 3 years. A lot of employers might want to know that you're going to be around 5, 6, 7 years. And in order to do that, they would need to submit an application for the H-1B lottery. That can be expensive, time consuming, and it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get an H-1B. So because of all that, some of these tips can really help with this job search process. So look for jobs that you are uniquely qualified for. And what I mean by that is jobs where you have experience, certain skill sets, or a combination thereof that not every average candidate would possess. So maybe that is, you're bilingual, speak multiple different languages. Maybe you have some kind of experience that, would be very beneficial to this company or in this particular role. Something that might be hard to find, or that not every other candidate has out there. Because if you're a uniquely good fit for this particular position, that could mean that the company will be more willing to bring on somebody with CPT that then might need an H-1B further down the line. If you're a hard to find type candidate, and you're uniquely qualified for this particular role, that's something that they're going to look at and want to bring you on and want to kind of go through the extra paperwork and effort for. Also looking for companies that might have clients internationally or offices internationally. You know, if they have clients, let's just say back from your home country, then you kind of have some unique insight into how business is done back home. That could be kind of something that you might be uniquely qualified for. Offices internationally can help out too, because let's just say they do want to bring you on full time, and maybe they even submit, you know, a petition for an H-1B, but you don't get it. They could potentially transfer you back home if they have offices there. And that still could be something where, you know, the time that they invest in you, training you, still can pay off, because you would still be able to work for the company, maybe just internationally. Relationship building is key. That is probably the most important thing you can do in your job search, is build relationships with folks that are working at the companies that you're applying to. Because that can really help when you're submitting your resume or an application online. Typically, you have to check a box that says something to the effect of, will you now or in the future need visa sponsorship? Or are you legally authorized to work in the US? You know, if you check the box and say, yes, I will now or in the future need visa sponsorship, and you just, that's the only thing you're doing, right? You submit your resume, check that box, let it go. It can be pretty easy for that recruiter who's looking at your application to see that you're going to need visa sponsorship and just move on to a candidate that doesn't. So building relationships, meeting people, talking to folks, networking, having informational interviews, that allows you to kind of sell yourself and show them why, going back to earlier tip, you are uniquely qualified for this role. That will really help out, because hopefully they know you even before you get to the application stage. And then your application is somewhat of, you know, it's just a formality at that point. You've already met folks, you've already sold yourself, and they already want to bring you in for an interview. That really helps. So the more you can network, the more you can build relationships, go to career fairs, go to employer info sessions. That's going to be key in your job and internship search. Also, using LinkedIn, using Handshake to reach out to alumni, whether it's alumni of Seattle U, or if you're a grad student, maybe it's an alumni of where you did your undergrad at, if you did that somewhere else. That is extremely important as well. So if you happen to, maybe you don't know anybody at a company you want to work at, what I always say is make a new friend, right? Use LinkedIn to connect with them, reach out to them, and ask for an informational interview. Basically, an informational interview is sort of an unofficial interview. It's where you're asking questions you're learning from somebody that works at this company, and the employee of that company kind of gets to ask you some questions and try to determine whether you might be a good fit for the company. And potentially that can lead to them submitting your application as an employee referral. I don't recommend you just reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn and saying, hi, can you submit me as an employee referral, or I'm interested in doing an internship. They just say, I don't know, go apply, right? You want to build relationships. You want to try to learn from them, and an informational interview is a key way of doing that. I can dive into all of these tips, and any advisor in the Albers Placement Center can as well. So if you want to learn more about kind of strategies about how to do these things, definitely I'd recommend scheduling an appointment with us. We also have a YouTube playlist. I dropped the link earlier in the chat, but I'll do it again now. So on our YouTube playlist, we have a couple past webinars that we did that really dive into job search strategies for international students. We also have other webinars on there about interview tips, preparing for an interview, using LinkedIn to reach out to alumni, and really using LinkedIn as part of a good job search strategy. So there's a lot of good webinars up on that playlist as well.
Justin, can I jump in? We also try to do international student focused career related workshop every quarter. In the fall, generally it's this one around CPT, but in the past we've partnered with ISC to do an H-1B, understanding the H-1B visa workshop. We've done one with a panel of international student alumni talking about kind of how they managed all of this. So keep your eye out for that, so you can hear those stories, and then, you know, be seeing who those alumni are, and then maybe you can go connect with them on LinkedIn, because I know it's really helpful sometimes to hear what people have done in the past. So
Cool. I think I'm done with this slide. We can go to the next one. Okay, so here are some resources that might help in your job search. So both the Albers Placement Center and the International Student Center have a ton of resources on their websites you can access. If you were to go to the Albers Placement Center website, you can just search Albers Placement Center on the Seattle U main page up in the search bar. It'll take you to our website. If you click a students tab kind of at the top, it'll bring you down to various buckets. Then we have a ton of online guides that you can access anytime. Everything from informational interview tips to networking, resumes, interview prep, all sorts of stuff. There's also links to various outside platforms that we have access to, or Seattle U students have access to. One of those is called CareerShift. It's a job search platform. It allows you to find, does a couple things. One, it allows you to easily find people that work at certain companies. There's lots of jobs posted on CareerShift. It also allows you to search by H-1B keyword. So what that might do is any job description that mentions H-1B in it, all those jobs would be filtered for you. Now, the caveat to that is it might say we do not sponsor for H-1B. That's probably not going to help you that much. But some will say we do sponsor H-1B. Those would be good jobs and good companies to look at because they're willing to bring, if they're willing to bring somebody on with an H-1B and go through that process of petitioning for it, they're probably going to be willing to also bring on somebody with OPT or CPT. So that's something to think about. And if you want access to CareerShift, like I said, all you would need to do is go to our website, hit the Students tab up top, and then you'd want to hit the Job and Internship Search tab. And then there's a drop down for CareerShift. It kind of outlines what it does, and there's a link to access it. Lock in China is sort of an international job board for people who are looking to work in China or in that general area. So let's just say for whatever reason, job search isn't working out in the US, or you want to go back home, or you just want to work internationally, then Lock in China could be a good resource because it's specifically focused on that area. To access that platform, I'm just going to drop a link in the chat. And there's more information about how to use it and what it does. So bear with me one sec. So the link to that job search platform is right there. So a couple other options for you to consider in your job search. Also, obviously using Handshake and using LinkedIn are both two great job search platforms. LinkedIn is great because you also have access to finding alumni or other folks to reach out to who work at the companies you're applying to. Handshake is a college-specific job board. So any employer that's looking to hire a college student, whether for a full-time role or an internship, is probably posting their jobs on Handshake. So also a good one to focus on.
And I think we have an international student page on our website, right, Justin? I think it's under the students part, or if you just scroll down on our main website, I think there's a tab and it just has resources for international students on there, and it should be linking to all these things on there too, if that's a little bit easier to find them that way. So.
Correct. Okay, another cool site is myvisajobs.com. So what this does, it allows you to search a database of every employer that has petitioned for an H-1B, and you can filter that down by city. So if you want to work in Seattle, you could filter down by Seattle, and it will give you a list of all of the employers, I believe within the last year, that have filed a petition for an H-1B. Again, that is kind of maybe a good starting point to look at and research those companies, find out what they do, what kind of jobs they have posted, start building relationships with folks that work at these companies. Because again, if they're willing to petition or submit a petition for an H-1B, they're probably also willing to bring somebody on at CPT or OPT. So can be a very good sort of starting point in any kind of internship or job search. And that's, staffing agencies. So very quickly, staffing agencies basically work to hire people on behalf of other companies. And they're called contract work. So short term, very similar to an internship. It just doesn't have internship in the title. And it's something that you can do with CPT as well, as long as the position, as Megan and Dale have both been talking about, kind of relates back to your area of study. So if you're an MSBA student and you find maybe an analytics role, maybe it's a marketing analytics role that's really heavy in the analytics side, staffing agencies might be hiring for maybe a 6-month duration contract position with, let's say, Microsoft. That's something that you could potentially do and look at, and it would be fine for a CPT or OPT.
Yeah, we consider contract roles or temp roles kind of like internships. So we approve them for CPT. This is also a great strategy for when you're applying for positions on OPT as well, because that's also, just a certain amount of time frame. And so if you're wanting to get relevant work experience and the company's not expecting you to be there really long term, contract or temp positions work really well. Also, really great way to get your foot in the door at an organization and then see if there's some possibilities beyond that. So
it's a great way to prove yourself. And again, thinking about the long-term H-1B process, if that's what you're interested in, starting out in a contract role really might be something companies are more willing to do, because it allows them 3-6 months of exposure to your work, and you can really prove yourself and show why they should hire you long-term for a full-time position permanently. And these are just a small grouping of some of the more common staffing agencies around. If you were to just Google like Seattle area staffing agencies, you'll get a list of a ton of them. Campus Point in particular focuses on contract positions for college students and recent grads. So that might be a good starting point as well.
Thanks, Justin. Anything else?
I think that's it for now. Again, that's
awesome.
Super high level. Make appointments. Happy to dive into all this in much more detail with you.
Thanks, Justin. Super great. So I guess my biggest message is, in conclusion, after we did, you can see with all the details, it's kind of complicated sometimes, and everybody's situation is so unique. So, these were general guidelines today, but you're all coming with different timelines and programs and opportunities and degrees. And so it's really good to plan ahead and to communicate with all those different constituents that I showed on that previous slide, especially checking in with International Student Center to find out what are you able to do on your visa, and making sure that you're not just making assumptions or only talking to friends. We never want you to be in a situation where something went awry and it affected your status. And then definitely communicating with our team so that we can help make sure you're pursuing the right internships. And just that, you're on the right path and that this all works out really well for you. So I know we're at an hour. So I want to respect your time. If you need to head out, happy to help you. If you want to make an appointment with us, we can dive into this more. I'm happy to stay on for a little bit and answer some questions in the chat, but I think formally we'll say thank you so much for attending today, and I think we can stop recording.